And there we go. Okay, so we all watched the family therapy session this week, and if everyone can get out their notes and stuff if they haven't already, I think we should tackle this. We'll each take turns answering a point or a prompt. And so the first one I read was take turns talking about the points you identified, both the overt references and the more subtle ones. Would anyone like to volunteer to start sharing their points that they identified?
Sorry, I'm just trying to grab something. I lost it.
So I can, I guess I can go first if that's okay. So I kind of took notes on I guess the perspective of the things I noticed about the professional working, and also a few notes on, I guess, the family and kind of their body language and stuff like that. So I'm going to pick out some of the ones that I guess stuck out to me more, so I don't read you guys some pointless things. So one of the first things I noticed was that the professional, the therapist, he spent a lot of time validating everyone else's feelings. And one of the most interesting things to me by the end of the video was that I kind of looked back and realized he didn't give much advice at all. He spent most of his time letting the family discuss their problems and, I guess, tell each other what was going on with their own thoughts. And, he, like, for instance, when he turned to the parents and he asked them to sit together and such, and he said, what are some things you can do to focus on your communication, or what are some of the things you guys like to do for fun or whatever, and we just can talk to each other. The father mentioned, or the husband mentioned, they used to go on dates. It was, I mean, we read in our textbooks and all that stuff about how important dating is, and that's just one example to me, of how the therapist could have said, you guys should go on more dates, but he used the knowledge and he used the family to come up with, I guess, ways they can cure their own family issues. And that was one thing that I really liked. And I was like kind of noticing a few other things. He always made sure that he was understanding the family's concerns and the family's thoughts correctly. And he gave the family chances to correct him if he was wrong. He started leading off, kind of getting to know them, and I guess not allowing them to feel more uncomfortable than they needed to be in that setting. And then I don't want to take up all the things because I know you guys got a lot of stuff, but with the family, I noticed that Jimmy, the thing this was all about, he sat in the chair over by himself while the rest of the family sat on the sofa. And then, and I don't know if you noticed that when the therapist moved the husband over to the wife, sat next to each other, they held hands for a second, and then when they started talking about how irritated, I guess, they get from each other, they stopped holding hands. And then later, when they started getting all lovey-dovey again, because they're talking about ways they were gonna, and I guess, start supporting each other and this and that, they started holding hands again. And he grabbed her hand, and so I thought that was pretty interesting too. I guess something noteworthy. And then lastly, I liked how the therapist kind of focused and broke down each subsystem within the family and put an emphasis on fixing those subsystems and how those subsystems will help connect the family as a whole again. And yeah, so I'm gonna let somebody else go before I talk further.
I'll go next if no one else wants to go. Any objections? Okay. So if I'm like if I repeat anything that you said, I'm super sorry. I don't think I'm going to, because I tried to make note of what you're saying, a lot of which I noticed too, the hand holding with the parents. I noticed that they grabbed each other's hands, and then I noticed when they let go, I was like, oh no. But it was really interesting to watch. And some notes that I took is I first of all, I liked that he established I don't want to say a relationship, because he even said like he just met them for 49 minutes, but he established like even the smallest connection with each one of them individually. It would be so easy to be like, as a whole, like, so, which he did, like, so what do you guys like to do for fun? And then just one person answer, okay, moving on. But he asked each person what they like to do. And then I noticed he did that throughout the session too. Like he would ask a question and say, how do you feel about this? And me personally, in a setting like that, I'm the type that they say, oh, so, how are you guys feeling? And someone else would be like, oh, I'm feeling good. I'm like, well, they said they feel good and I feel good, so I guess I don't need to say anything. But he made sure that that each person said something, and which I thought was interesting, just because I think I thought it was kind of uncomfortable at times. Like, I guess maybe I'm just sensitive too, but like everyone has said how they're feeling, and then he's like, well, Jimmy, how do you feel about it? And like, obviously there's like a difference in opinion there, but he didn't shy away from it and say like, okay, well, this kid's the problem, so maybe let's not ask him. Like, he asked him anyways. So I liked that. I noticed that. There's in the reading, it talks about using respectful language, and I noticed that he did that, and that he, there was no difference in the way that he talked to the parents and talked to the kids. He talked to everyone the same, and treated them equally, and I appreciated that. Also, what I noticed was, and now I can't find it because I'm, of course, wanting to talk about it. I can't find it, but oh, here it is. Credited positive intentions. I really liked that he did that, and I noted every time he did it. Like, for example, the one that stuck out the most to me was with his sister, which I guess maybe it's because I can kind of relate to her, because my sister, she kind of, I don't know, wilding out, I guess, but and I was always caught in the middle, like, do I tell my parent? Do I keep quiet? And I like that the professional wasn't just like, oh yeah, so you're ratting out your brother, huh? Like, he credited her positive intentions and said, like, so I see here that this is because you're worried about your brother and you're not trying to get him in trouble. It's because you care about him. The same thing with the mom. Like, when you yell at him, you're not trying to yell at him. You're trying to let him know you care. When the kid takes off, you're taking off because of this. He made sure that he put a positive spin on each person's actions, just so that he wasn't attacking anybody. Should I go on? I don't want to take them all, but I also don't want to contribute enough.
Maybe, yeah, we'll let somebody else go, and then if there's some points that somebody else never said, then we can revisit.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you. Okay.
Oh, shoot.
Whoever's next, feel free.
I can go. Let me just filter through here and figure out what has already been said. So I'll just kind of point out like a couple of the things that we've talked about that was in the reading that I'll include in the breakdown that I submit. But like we had talked about how the therapist tries to get background on the family and tries to find out how each family member feels individually. And that I felt like connected with from the reading section, tracking stressors and coping/adaptation processes over time. So just him being able to recognize like where each person was coming from. I felt like this situation was kind of hard to like find a lot of things in the reading because it wasn't like a super major crisis. But anyway, that was kind of a nitpicky thing. But let's see. I guess continuing with that, making meaning of crisis experiences and clarifying ambiguity. He, as far as the clarifying ambiguity part, the therapist, wanted to make sure that each member of the family was able to express how they felt. And he like reiterated, like we said, he made sure that he understood what each person was saying. And it was good because obviously each member of the family was feeling things for different reasons. And so it was good that he brought it up so that everyone else could hear it. And I almost feel like that's a benefit, the fact that he like repeated what they were saying so that other members of the family who may have like zoned out for a minute or whatever were able to hear it again. Let's see. One thing I noticed too was that he normalized their distress. So he, like, particularly the mom's feelings, like how she was very intense and like felt like when she doesn't hear from her son that the worst has happened, and he just validated her feelings, saying like, yeah, that's totally normal as a parent. He expressed that he's also felt that way about his kids. Let's see. So then these are actually my last 2 points. I didn't really find much different from what has already been said, but the part in the reading that talks about refocusing from complaints to aims, collaboration and team, and then I also included collaboration and teamwork. They don't just talk about the situation the whole time. Eventually he changes gears and talks about what they can do to work together to find a solution. And I appreciated what Jeremiah pointed out, like he didn't give them a solution to the problem. He made a couple of suggestions of ways they can find solutions. So like you said, suggesting that the husband and wife go out on dates, that the father and son get together and talk, that the sister and brother get together and hang out, you know. All of those things were ways to refocus from the complaints about Jimmy and end on a positive note, like refocus on what they can do to strengthen their relationships. So anyway, that's mostly what I got. I'll let someone else go now.
So I feel like I didn't really get much different to what everyone did. I feel like I said, it's kind of hard to pick out so many different things when they are the main things we saw. But I think for me, like the most important part was that he created those relationships at the beginning. Because I know for me, like it's hard just to talk to a stranger, like if you don't know them. But if you can find like a small connection, you feel more comfortable expressing your emotions and how you're truly feeling in that situation. I feel like that was so important for this family because there were different opinions on the situation. And I think because of that, they all felt like they were validated in those feelings. But he still found ways to like kind of home in on the true nature of what was happening and to allow them as a family to find solutions. I think that's what, like, for me, that's how I felt it was truly helping them, was bringing them together as a family. And like with the dates and bringing the siblings together, I think, I guess it's just like relating it to your own family. Like my family's been through stuff and that's how we got through it. We did have a family counselor come in and it was the exact same experience as we had. They didn't give advice, but they helped us to see how we could help ourselves. So it's kind of like, and going into it, I thought, oh, they'll give us the advice we need and tell us what to do. But that's not what you need. You need a change of attitude and just to get that clarification of how everyone else is feeling and to be able to understand that. So I think that was one thing for me I noticed within this, like when they each expressed how they felt, you could like see the emotion in everyone else, like how they kind of saw it from their opinion and from their view. And it kind of, I saw it like set in with them, like, oh, like they have this feeling and it's different to mine. And for me, I felt like that was the most important part that came from it. And also I noticed everything else you guys said, but they've already been covered. But yeah, that's kind of what I noticed that was the biggest part of it for me. So, yeah.
Okay. I'll talk about things that I noticed then. Just talking more about their body language, I noticed little things that they each did. So like Jimmy, he was hunched over in the corner and just like hiding, which kind of showed like how his personality, like he probably felt some guilt for what he had been doing, but just wanted to like sneak around. Maddie, the daughter, she had her arms folded, which just shows like kind of being closed off and maybe a little bit aggressive. And he had said that, Jimmy said that she yells at him often. So yeah, just that she was very closed off with her body language. And then the mom's hands were clenched. Yeah, just showing frustration. And the dad was like pretty chill. His arms were just on the couch or on his legs and he wasn't too worried. So that was interesting to see. I did notice that Jimmy, he was like, well, why do I have to be home if dad is never home? So that made me think that maybe he needed his relationship with his dad strengthened, and that he wanted to be treated like an adult. Like his dad was gone and he's an adult, so why can't he be gone? So I thought that was interesting and maybe had some underlying things to it. I did like that the counselor stood up for each person. I feel like he brought what they said in front of everyone and like everyone had said, validated it. So built confidence with each person. They knew that they could trust him because he understood their point of view. And then from what I saw, the counselor did a really good job about just showing that the reason that they were all there was because they cared about each other. And so I think that like Jimmy may have been thinking that Maddie was a little brat and was just tattletelling on him, but really she was just doing it because she loved him. And same with all of them. So I think it just changed their perspective, which is why they were maybe able to come up with their own solutions toward the end, because they understood more about why their family members were acting the way that they were. So that's what I had.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I copied a lot of stuff that he all said that I didn't think about. I saw one in my notes that I wanted to share real quick. I don't know, but it kind of hit me when, like, how I guess trained the therapist is. I don't know, but and I put here, it says he pinpointed where each emotion and feeling really came from. And the example I have is the husband cared for his wife's feelings towards Jimmy, although he didn't have the same concerns over Jimmy. And I, for some reason, I wasn't thinking that way. And so when the therapist said, I guess, validated or made sure that that's where it came from, that his stress isn't coming necessarily from Jimmy, but it's coming from the fact that he wants his wife to be happy and he wants his wife to feel comfortable. And I thought it was kind of funny because that's kind of how I am with my wife, you know. I'm laid back, and you know, I don't really get worked up over a lot of things, but she's the disciplinarian for the kids, so a lot of how I react is in support of her, and so I just, that's why I guess that stuck out to me a lot. But so we can keep going. So the next point is note the trends of your finding as a group. Did everyone identify the same points, or were there points that not everyone caught? So I guess we kind of went over that. We kind of shared different points. We all mentioned that we had similar ones. I guess for the sake of participating in this, did anyone have a specific, I guess, point that was shared by somebody else that stuck out to them? Like, I liked when Logan said that she looked deeper into the body language than I thought of doing, and she noticed, you know, Jimmy hunched over, and she noticed the mom's arms or the sister's arms are folded, and the mom was clenching her hands and such. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share, I guess, yeah, about that?
The one that stuck out to me, I guess, was already said, but I guess I'll say anyways, just to participate. So I did like and not think about the fact that at the end of the throughout, and then at the end, he was just like, "Hey, so you guys can go on a date and you guys could spend some time together, and that's it." It's like, what? That's it? That's it? And he really, it's funny because he helped them, and you could see that he helped them, but you're like, what did you actually do? What did you do besides talk to them? It was kind of hard to pinpoint. So I really liked the point that was made that he really didn't do anything. I mean, he did something, but he didn't do anything major or like some big, gigantic, like, ta-da, you're all healed or whatever. But it was just small and simple things, and he helped them to kind of solve it themselves. So I liked that point because that wasn't something that I picked up on as much.
Awesome, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to share something real quick?
I do like how you mentioned about like the subsystems, because I don't think I focused on that as much as I should have. Like I saw it, but not in the depth that you did. And I saw the body language. Like it's interesting to see like how Logan delved into that and really saw that in her findings. And they're both major things that need to be looked at, and they just stuck out to me as things that I kind of noticed but didn't look as deep into as I should have. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
So can I add
So I guess we'll
something
move
real
on to
quick?
the next. Oh, yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Sure.
So one thing that I noticed that I was just reminded of from what Logan was saying, the fact that the dad was so relaxed and like chill. Obviously, we knew that he like didn't care, but or he was just there to support his wife, basically. But one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and like the therapist didn't really like draw it out that much, but the father kind of said like, well, my parents weren't around when I was a kid, and they're not really around still. I kind of wish that the therapist had like kind of pointed that out to the kids at least. I don't know that the kids would have picked up on that, but at least for Jimmy to see that, okay, my grandparents aren't really in my life and they didn't really care about my dad. Like, obviously my parents care about me and they're wanting to stay in my life. Like, I feel like that would have, I don't know. And I mean, hopefully they picked up on that. Obviously this is like fake, but anyway, that was just one thing that I noticed that stood out to me.
I have something else that I just remembered. Early on in the counseling session, the husband called his wife dramatic. He was like, well, that's a little bit dramatic, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. And so I think that just showed that there wasn't very much communication in the marriage relationship. And so I think that that's maybe why he focused so much on like, you guys need to go on dates, was because if the parents are unified, then everything just like trickles down and is much easier. But if they're not unified, then communication is all off in the family.
I noticed that too. And then when he said that like when he used the word crazy, like there's jokes about like, don't say she's crazy. And when he said she goes crazy, I was like, oh no, don't say that. But she seemed pretty chill about it. But I thought that was interesting that he said that. And so it's cool that they are gonna go on dates. And I mean, I guess later on she said, I do feel crazy. But that was just an interesting point. So that's cool. We're going to go on dates and hopefully not be so crazy.
Yeah, I had to laugh when he was saying those things. I was like, you're a gutsy man. I would never. Oh my goodness. But I kind of interpreted that as if she was able to admit it, I guess, then they had, I guess, some communication about, like, I guess, I don't know, making him comfortable enough to say those things. Yeah, I was, yeah, I don't know. That was kind of off to me, but no judgment at the same time. I'm trying not to. So let's move on to the third prompt. Talk about your observations. So was anybody surprised by the findings or by their observations that they had through this, I guess, video, this therapy session?
Sorry, are we talking about the observations of our group or the observations of the professional?
It just says talk about your observations. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to share, then I feel you should go for it.
I wasn't surprised, I don't think, by anything. I mean, some stuff was like, oh yeah, but none of it was like, whoa. So I wasn't surprised, I guess.
I think that the only thing that I was a little bit surprised about is that the therapist like kind of interrupted them a little bit at times. Like, I always think of therapy as like, how do you feel about that? And then there's like silence, and the therapist like try to get the people to talk more. But he was just like, oh, okay, so this means that. And then how do you, and it was just like, he was really fast paced. And I think that surprised me that he didn't just like allow them to talk a little bit more, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And it totally skipped my mind, but I'm glad you brought that up. I was a little bit surprised too. And he was like, and there was one time when the mom was speaking, and he just like cut right in there and was like, I'm going to cut you off, and I'm going to address this. And I was like, oh, you know, like, I don't know. I'm glad the mom handled that well, and I guess you knew they were there for the right reason if they can, you know, take time to listen and to that. Anybody else before we move on?
Just going off that, I feel like when he did interrupt at that point, I feel like he obviously had the intention of, if I don't stop her now, then she may see something that could, what's the word? Like upset someone else through what she was about to say. And so, but like there were some cases where I felt like he was just kind of cutting them off in kind of areas that they needed to get out. But in that particular situation, I kind of understood, because I felt like he needed to stop her and like allow her time to think about what she was saying, and like allow someone else to bring in, because I felt, to me, like she seemed to kind of get a little heated, and she kind of needed to cool off, if that makes sense. But like there was a lot of interruption, and because I was like, oh, like a little bit is fine, but then like he kept doing it, and it kind of got to the point where it's just like you sit there and you're watching it and you're like trying to tell him not to, but he's the professional, so like he knew what he was doing. But yeah, I kind of got kind of frustrated watching that. But then I was in that situation, but obviously he had their family and the center of everything he was doing, and he wanted to do his best, and I think he obviously did a really good job, and that's what they needed. But I guess it's just hard to analyze each like little thing that he does. But yeah.
I think too, that's a really good point about, you know, making sure that they had time to think. But I think too that the interruptions, I think they often, I wish I would have paid more attention to it, but I think that interruptions, they probably elicited a good outcome, just because sometimes when someone's talking and they're saying a sentence and they're trying to get a point across, but while they're trying to get that point across, they're saying things that he's like, oh, well, I should touch on that. And I think that's kind of shows where, like Amy Jo said, that kind of shows where he's the professional, because whereas I probably just let someone finish and be like, okay, well, let's talk about that. But he picks up on things like little bells, like, oh, let's touch on that. And he doesn't let the moment pass, because, you know, it's easy, even though he's a professional, I'm sure it's easy to forget and get lost in all the points she's trying to make. So by interrupting, he makes sure that when he hears something that should be addressed or clarified, that he does it right then, which is, yeah, that is interesting and not what I would think, but cool.
That was a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. I'm one to talk about everything, so if someone could stop me when they wanted to, I give you the okay. Okay, so we got about like 8 minutes left before we move. I guess we move on to Tori sharing the notes she took. And the last prompt is discuss and record how a treatment professional or paraprofessional might prepare to capitalize on such opportunities to introduce or reinforce the types of resiliency factors from Walsh's article. Okay. Let me pull up Walsh's thing. Sorry, while I'm doing this, does anybody have something set they can share that's right on screen? I forgot to pull up her thing.
If I'm being honest, that question is like, I have a hard time wrapping my head. Like, anyway, the only thing I really got from that question, like how I feel like professionals can apply this stuff, is to just be familiar with it. That's all I can think of. Like, I don't know how much deeper you can go than that. Please, someone else enlighten me, because I cannot think of anything else. But I just feel like in Walsh's in that chapter at the beginning, there's some table. What is it? Table 6.1, key processes in family resilience, and it like lists all these different processes, I guess, but I would think of it as like characteristics or whatever that families who have good resilience possess or whatever. And so anyway, I feel like as long as the therapist is familiar with these things and is able to like quickly figure out like, okay, obviously they're struggling with this or this, let's find a way to get them to not do that. Anyway, that's all I can think of. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway.
Yeah, I kind of got a little bit, I had to read the question like 47 times just to make sure I knew, and I still don't know what it's necessarily asking. To me, I feel like, well, in the video, he did use some of Walsh's principles. And I guess, like, since we just talked about with Miranda, he made sure he got clear and consistent messages, and that was part of the clarity point in Walsh's and her communication process. And so, and there's other things like he made sure that everyone is able to, I guess, address their own feelings and their own behaviors and stuff. And he empathized with everybody. And one that I thought that really applied here was a pleasurable interaction and humor. And I mean, he was a pretty delightful man. He kept calling himself a dork, and I couldn't help but agree. But you know, you could tell like he was totally neutral, and he didn't like lean towards anyone's opinions or sides or anything, and he talked the same throughout the entire meeting, unless like he was bringing out a point. But it was just like, it was like one of those things that made it the point interesting. Like, wait, let's take a look at that, you know. And that was really the only time that he really changed his, I guess, tone or anything. He, like I said, he worked on subsystems. He tried reconnecting the family back together in that way, in those subsystems, and having the mom and dad go on dates, the brother and sister go out for a soda, and for dad and son to go to the skate park, and you know. So I mean, I think there's a lot of principles that he used that we read in chapter 6.
Yeah, I agree. Like after reading through it and then watching that, like I saw whenever he was bringing in those elements, especially like when he was like building the connections and empathizing with each family member, because that was one that like stood out to me when I was reading. And I noticed that he did that constantly throughout the session. He made sure that each family member was validated in how they felt, but he also empathized with them. He didn't just agree, but he kind of went, he was saying like, oh, I understand why you feel like that, and then kind of redirected it into a good aspect. So he wasn't just agreeing and saying, oh yeah, like, I see why you're doing that, but he was focusing on it and putting all that energy into something to come good out of it. So, also, sorry I left. My puppy was like chewing on something she shouldn't, so I had to like stop her, but I am concentrating and focused.
Yeah, I was impressed with his ability to like talk to all of them, and then it's clear that there was like kind of two sides to what was going on, and yet he like was on everybody's side. I'm like, how are you doing that? Like, because I have a tendency to like in my comments kind of not make it, I try not to make it super obvious, but like your facial expressions or just like little small things, you kind of make it clear what side you're on, quote unquote. But it's just like, I guess he's in the position like, I'm on the family side. Like, that's whose side I'm on. I'm on the side that's trying to help this family. But I was impressed that he was able to like somehow be on everyone's team, even though they were like not agreeing. It was cool. I liked it.
Okay, I guess I need to say something. I really don't understand that question either, but when Miranda was talking, I just made me think of his body language as well, and how he was on everyone's side, but also you could tell by his body language that he was just very open to whatever they were saying, and just took it all in. Like, he was just sitting in his chair, he would move around, he would face the person that was talking, where the other people didn't. They were just like all facing forward, not wanting to look at their family members that they were angry with. So yeah, he did a good job at like being just on everyone's side, I think.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, I like how you brought that up too, Miranda. And I noticed the same thing too, Logan, is that he was sitting at the edge of the chair the whole time. He never, you know, he leaned back just, I guess, a few times, just I guess by his waving arms, but it wasn't to relax, or it wasn't to really sit back and think. It was. I noticed that too, and I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot. So it's 3:50, or my time. I guess 7:50 Mountain Standard Time. So we can use the last few minutes here to discuss what Tori recorded. So Tori, if you want to read what you wrote, then, and she said that she's also doing this on a Google Docs. So if there is anything any of us want to edit, we can do that, I guess, on our own time. So Tori, go ahead.
Yeah, just a second. I'm just trying to finish up this thing. I will say I'm definitely going to need help with putting this conclusion together. I'll read out what I have. And instead of, I mean, I can read it for sure, but I feel like it would be best for everyone at some point to get on the Google Doc, whether tonight, because I'll just, I mean, it should be shared with you guys. So check your emails and just respond to that group text if you didn't get it, but it's all right there. So anyway, feel free to change things and adjust, but this conclusion is like, I have no idea what to write. I mean, I have some basic stuff of what we shared, but hold on just one second. I need to finish this thought before I read anything. Okay, so, and if you want, you can hop on the Google Doc and just follow along with me reading. So I have our first section is going to be finding and connections to Walsh, or the readings. So building empathetic connections with and between family members. The therapist built an empathetic connection between himself and the mother when he stated that he had felt those same fears about his children. Are they dead, etc. Tracking stressors and coping / adaptation processes over time. The therapist asked questions to get a little bit of background about the family and the reason they came in, which was Jimmy's disobedience and absence, and what it meant to each member of the family. Making meaning of crisis experiences and clarifying ambiguity. The therapist asks each member of the family what it means to them when Jimmy is late. He then clarifies or repeats what each person has said to make sure he understands what he or she meant. In clarifying ambiguity, he learns that each member of the family feels differently. The mom is stressed and worried about Jimmy when he doesn't come home and doesn't respond to her reaching out. The dad isn't so worried, but he is concerned for his wife. The sister is worried because she doesn't have a good impression about the kids Jimmy hangs out with. And Jimmy doesn't see a problem because he knows he's doing okay. The therapist spent a lot of time validating each family member's feelings. The therapist asked the family members for their ideas of what they can do to improve. Therapist constantly asked for clarification to make sure he understood what each family member was feeling, and he made sure they were comfortable. Under normalizing family distress, the therapist takes the opportunity to share that he has also had feelings of extreme worry about his children. This validated the mom's feelings and helped other members of the family recognize that. The therapist focused on different subsystems within the family. I need to adjust that and figure out where that fits. But the therapist recognized that the father wasn't necessarily concerned about Jimmy, but wanted to support his wife, and he pointed this out to the family. The therapist established a connection with each family member individually, both at the beginning and throughout the discussion. And under using respectful language and constructs, the therapist used respectful language. He spoke to everyone the same. All members were addressed with respect, including Jimmy. He credited the sister's positive intentions. He recognized that she cares for Jimmy, and that's why she acts as informant to the parents. And under refocusing from complaints to aims and collaboration and teamwork, the therapist changes gears at some point to talk about what ways the family can work together to find a solution. Example, husband and wife going on dates to have one-on-one discussions before there is a problem so that they can be level-headed when making decisions. Brother and sister reconnecting by having a sibling date to talk about life other than these issues. Father and son could spend time talking and connecting each week. The therapist helped the family to strive to solve the problems themselves instead of giving them advice. And the therapist was able to point out that each family member was acting the way they were because they cared. And this helped change each family member's views. And then under observations, Jimmy sat by himself in a chair at the start of the session. He seemed closed off and hidden. Maddie seemed closed off and aggressive because her arms were folded. Brother stated that she yells at him at home and acts like a second mom. Mom's hands were clenched together, showing frustration. Dad was relaxed. The husband and wife held hands when they first sat by each other. When they were discussing their frustrations with each other, they let go. Then when they discussed reconnecting through dating, they held hands again. Each family member had different feelings and reactions to the stressor. Jimmy seems to want to be treated as an adult, and he made a comment about how his dad is never home. It is surprising to some to see that the therapist interrupted family members frequently. From what is dramatized in Hollywood, therapy sessions seem more about the patient or client talking about their feelings. However, the therapist seemed to know what he was doing. He may have done it to help prevent something from being said that could have been hurtful. He also may have interrupted to make sure he didn't forget to say something that could be important. The therapist was very engaged throughout the entire session. He sat on the edge of his chair and faced each person as he was talking. Let me get that. And he was very engaged in the conversation with each person. So this is what I have for the conclusion. Please help me, guys. And again, you don't have to like spit out things now, but anyway. So conclusion, therapists should become familiar with the characteristics of a resilient family. As therapists get clarity from family members and allow family members to discuss their feelings, they will be able to understand what the family's strengths and weaknesses are. As family therapists focus on improving subsystems within the family, they will be able to foster resilience. And when therapists show empathy, this last part, guys, is like total run-on sentence. I'm going to have to readjust this, but when therapists show empathy and use redirection to give positive spins to feelings, it will be a positive experience for the family, and they will recognize that their therapist is their advocate. I need to change that up. I know that, but that's all I have. If you guys have any suggestions, especially for that conclusion, because I just have no idea what else to add. But anyway, I'll stop talking because obviously I've been talking for a while.
I don't think the end of the conclusion was like a rambling. To me, it made sense, and it kind of was what we were talking about. I don't see anything that I would necessarily change. I think you did a really good job of that, and keeping a track of it as we were talking. That couldn't have been easy. But yeah, I think it's really good, and I can't really see anything to really improve on or add on my part.
I agree. I think it's great. I'll go back and I'll read. I know we just reread it, but I'm kind of weird that way. I have to look over things a million times because I guess my brain doesn't work as well as other people's.
Please do. Please do. I'm not going to submit it tonight. I'm going to give you guys time to kind of go over it, and if you think of anything that I may have missed, just add it right on in there. I know I need to adjust something. I put something in a weird category, but yeah, please do read it again.
Yeah, I think you did a great job. You included even things that we kind of looked over, some of the smaller details that I noticed, and so I was appreciative of that. The conclusion was great to me. I'm gonna have to look over it too to make sure I got everything, but yeah, I think it was great. Thank you for doing that for us.
Cool, no problem. So if you guys want to, if everyone can just take a look at it by like tomorrow night-ish and let me know if it's good to go, then I can submit it. And then if you want to, Jeremiah, if you want to send me the link, or does it show up for everyone? I don't know. I forget how it works for the air stuff, but I can submit both of them. So if you just send me the link, or it might even just be this, like the link in my browser. I don't really know. I can't remember how it works. But it might, like, when we end the session, it might pop up with the link. I honestly do not remember how this works at all. It's been a while since I've used the Hangout on Air.
I know
we have
someone, like, there's a discussion board and someone's gone and just posted that on the group discussion board. I'm not sure if that's like
did they say how to do it?
Well, so the discussion board for this group, for the project, the person who did the air stuff, they went and just copied and pasted it onto there so the professor could see it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there's any way we can get it onto the document as well.
Well, I think I would just add it. I think when you submit it, there's like that section where you can add a comment or whatever. Does that make sense? When you go to like submit a document for the, yeah. So I'll probably put it there. I imagine that's where she wants it. I'll put it like both places. I just don't know how to get the link, like if the link is just what's in my browser or if it's something different. I have no idea.
I think,
or is it a YouTube link?
Yeah, I think after I stop the broadcast, it converts over to YouTube, and then I'll get a link. So if anything, perfect. I can just paste it onto the document, and then I'll do what
that's perfect.
said, and I'll even post it on the discussion board.
Discussion board. Okay, perfect. Sounds
just post
like
it everywhere, and she'll find it.
Yeah, cover all of our bases.
Yeah. Okay. So if everybody's content with everything, like I am, I feel it's safe to close this meeting.
Perfect. Thank you for organizing everything. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for everything, everybody. Great meeting.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Let's call it a day. All right. Have a great night, guys.
Thanks, you too.